There was a single letter on the kitchen table. No envelope, no explanation, just one sheet of paper with 3 words written in her handwriting. Leave now. Disappear. I don't know how long I stood there staring at it, my hands trembling like a coward who'd just been told the world was ending. The house was silent, almost too silent, like it had swallowed every trace of her presence. Her coffee cup was still half full on the counter. Her shoes were lined up by the door, but she was gone. My first thought, she'd been taken, kidnapped, something terrible. I ran through every room like a madman, calling her name, checking closets, even the basement. Nothing. No signs of a struggle, no broken glass, just that note waiting like a trap. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. I called again, and again, until the sound of my own voice begging her to answer made me sick. Something inside me snapped. I remember grabbing my car keys, but I didn't know where I was going. Maybe to the police? Maybe to drive around like an idiot looking for her. But then I saw it. The black SUV parked across the street, windows tinted, engine running. It wasn't there that morning. I know every car in this neighborhood. I swear I saw someone inside, a shadow in the driver's seat watching me. When I stepped outside, the SUV rolled slowly down the street, not fast, not slow, just enough to make it clear they wanted me to see them leave. I felt this cold wave of fear crash over me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a joke. This wasn't just some argument gone too far. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I went back inside, locked the door, and read the note again, over and over. Disappear, not leave, not, we need a break. She wanted me gone. I don't know why, but I listened. I packed one bag, just clothes and my wallet. I left my phone behind on the kitchen counter because suddenly it felt like every signal, every call, every word was being watched. And then I drove. I didn't stop driving until the city lights were gone, and all I could see was the endless stretch of highway under the moon. 5 years. 5 years I stayed gone. And then I saw her again, and she collapsed the moment our eyes met. 5 years is a long time to convince yourself you don't exist anymore. I built a life where I was a ghost, no real name, no roots, just moving from one small town to another, taking whatever work I could find. It was easier that way. No questions, no explanations, no reminders of the letter that shattered me. I told myself she'd moved on, that maybe she was safer without me, and I buried every memory of her like a corpse I didn't want to dig up. But ghosts don't stay buried forever. It happened last month. I had just finished a delivery run at a grocery store in the city I once called home. I wasn't planning on coming back, not ever. But my truck broke down on the outskirts of town, and I ended up walking through the streets I thought I'd erased from my life. I kept my head down, hoping no one would recognize me, but fate doesn't care about your plans. I was at a crosswalk when I heard her voice. Miriam. I didn't even see her face at first, but that voice, it ripped through me like glass. I turned my head, and there she was, just a few feet away, holding a small girl's hand. She looked older, more tired, but still her. Our eyes met, and I swear the world stopped. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd collapse. She froze, and in that single second, I saw something I can't forget. Pure terror, not shock, not anger. Terror. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She let go of the little girl's hand, stumbled backward, and then she fainted. Just like that. People around her started shouting. Someone called for help, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were nailed to the ground. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run to her, to shake her awake and scream, "Why did you send me away? Why are you afraid of me?" But I also wanted to vanish again. My instincts told me that whatever forced her to write that letter all those years ago, it was still here, watching, waiting. And then I saw it, parked at the corner of the street, half hidden behind the line of cars. The same black SUV. My heart stopped. I hadn't seen it since that night, but I knew it. I'd never forget those tinted windows. And the worst part? The driver wasn't looking at Miriam lying unconscious on the sidewalk. He was looking at me. I turned and walked away. Not ran, not yet. I didn't want to draw attention. But every step felt like a countdown to something I didn't understand. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't safe, and neither was she. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything. Her face when she saw me, the SUV, the way my chest tightened like I'd just stepped into a trap I didn't know existed. It was like those 5 years of silence had suddenly erupted into a storm, and I couldn't tell which way to run. I sat in a cheap motel room on the edge of town, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe it wasn't even the same SUV. Maybe she fainted because she was shocked to see me. Maybe I was just paranoid. But I'm not an idiot, no matter how much of a coward I can be. Something about that moment, about the fear in her eyes, told me there was more to this story. The woman who had told me to disappear wasn't just tired of me, or in love with someone else. It felt deeper, darker, like she had been trying to save me from something, or someone. The next morning, I went back to the cafe where I'd first seen her. I sat across the street for hours, hidden behind the tinted windows of my beat-up truck, watching every person who walked in and out. I don't know what I was expecting, to see her again, to get answers. All I knew was that I couldn't just leave. Not now. Around noon, I saw her. She was with the same little girl, holding her hand tightly this time, glancing over her shoulder like someone was following them. My gut told me she knew I was nearby. For a moment, I almost got out of the truck and ran across the street. I almost shouted her name, but then I saw it again, the SUV. It was parked 3 cars behind me. Same dark windows, same slow presence, like a shark circling its prey. Only this time, I was sure they weren't just watching her. They were watching me too. My hands started shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't want to draw attention, so I waited until she walked past my truck, her face pale, eyes hollow. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and she just couldn't acknowledge me. I followed her at a distance. I know how that sounds, like some creepy ex-husband stalking his old life. But I wasn't thinking straight. I just needed to know where she was going. I needed to know if she was safe. She led me to a house on the outskirts of town, a small, quiet place with a white fence and a worn-out swing set in the yard. She unlocked the door, ushered the little girl inside, and shut it quickly. I waited. No lights came on, no sound, just silence. That's when I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. The SUV pulled up down the street. The driver stepped out. He was tall, wearing a black jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't look at the house. He looked directly at me. I panicked. I started the engine and drove away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I didn't know who he was or what he wanted, but I knew one thing. The same people who made Miriam tell me to vanish were still out there, and now they knew I was back. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the little girl. Was she mine? Was Miriam in danger because of me? Or was I the danger? The answers were buried in whatever happened 5 years ago, and I was done running. I didn't sleep the next night either. I kept seeing that man's face in my mind, or rather, the lack of it. The brim of his cap and the dark glasses made it impossible to read him, but the way he looked at me was enough. It wasn't random. It wasn't just someone curious about a stranger parked on the street. It was like he knew exactly who I was, like he'd been waiting for me to show up after all these years. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't keep sitting in my truck like some terrified rabbit, waiting for the fox to pounce. Miriam had a child now, a child who might be mine. If she was in trouble, then me staying away wasn't going to protect her. It might do the opposite. I spent the entire next day driving past the house on Sycamore Lane, keeping my distance. I noticed small details, like how the curtains were always drawn, even during the day, how no one else came or went, and how every few hours a black SUV or a similar car with tinted windows would slowly roll down the street like they were patrolling. It wasn't normal. It felt like surveillance. That evening, just as the sun started sinking behind the rooftops, I parked 2 blocks away and decided to walk closer. My legs were shaking with every step. I hated myself for how nervous I was. I used to think of myself as a strong man, someone who could face anything, but now, I felt like a shadow of who I'd been. Still, I couldn't stop. I made it to the fence. The white paint was chipped. The swing on the set creaked slightly in the breeze. I was just about to step closer when I saw her through the window. Miriam. She was standing in the kitchen, her hands gripping the counter as if holding herself together. The little girl was sitting at the table, drawing something on a piece of paper. I don't know why, but the sight of them, so ordinary and fragile, broke something in me. I wanted to knock on the door. I wanted to scream and demand answers. But I didn't, because in that moment, I saw movement. Across the street, parked just far enough away to seem casual, the SUV was there again. Only this time, the man was out of the vehicle, leaning against the hood, smoking a cigarette, and I swear to God, he was smiling at me. That's when I did something stupid. I walked straight toward him. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe I was sick of feeling like prey. Maybe I thought I could bluff my way through whatever this was. But as I got closer, his smile didn't fade. He dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot, and said just one thing. "You weren't supposed to come back." My blood ran cold. I wanted to ask who he was, what he meant, but my throat locked up. He tilted his head, almost amused, and added, "You should leave. For good this time, if you care about her." That was it. No threats, no shouting. Just calm, quiet words that cut deeper than anything. He got back in the SUV and drove off like nothing happened, leaving me standing there, heart pounding, fists clenched, feeling completely powerless. I walked back to my truck in a daze. Everything I thought I knew about why Miriam pushed me away was falling apart. She wasn't just done with me. She was trying to keep me out of something dangerous, something that clearly hadn't gone away in 5 years. But I'm not the man I was. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. The only way out is through, and that means getting answers, even if it kills me. The night after my confrontation with the man by the SUV, I couldn't think of anything but his words. "You weren't supposed to come back." They echoed in my head like a curse, twisting my thoughts until I felt physically sick. What did he mean by that? Why was my return such a problem for him, or whoever he worked for? And why was Miriam still being watched after all these years? By morning, I knew I couldn't just sit in that dingy motel, watching from a distance. The longer I stayed in the shadows, the more I'd let fear dictate my actions. If I wanted answers, I had to get closer. But I couldn't just show up at Miriam's door, not with that SUV still lurking. I needed to know what I was walking into. So I followed the SUV. It took me a while to find it again. I parked a few blocks from Sycamore Lane and waited. The driver showed up around noon, just as I'd predicted. He didn't stay in one place long. He'd circle the neighborhood, pull over for a while, and then drive off. I kept my distance, following at just the right angle so he wouldn't notice me. After nearly an hour, he turned onto an industrial road, one that led out toward the old railway warehouses. That's where he stopped. The place was almost abandoned. Half the buildings were boarded up, windows shattered, graffiti covering the walls. He got out, walked into one of the warehouses, and didn't come out for almost 30 minutes. While I waited, I noticed something strange. The warehouse didn't look abandoned inside. Through a broken window, I saw lights flickering and heard the faint hum of machinery. Someone was using this place. When the man finally came out, he wasn't alone. Another man followed him, this one older, wearing a leather jacket and carrying a folder under his arm. They spoke briefly, too far for me to hear, then parted ways. The SUV went one way. The older man walked down the road and disappeared behind another building. I should have left it there, but curiosity, and maybe some self-destructive instinct, pushed me further. I parked, got out of my truck, and carefully made my way to the warehouse. The front door was locked, but a side entrance had been forced open, like someone had broken in months ago and no one cared enough to fix it. Inside, the place smelled of oil and dust. There were old crates scattered around, but it wasn't the mess that caught my attention. It was the wall of photographs, dozens of them, pinned to a corkboard. Most were grainy surveillance shots taken from a distance. I stepped closer and my stomach turned. They were pictures of Miriam, her walking down the street, picking up groceries, playing with the little girl in the yard. Some of them were recent, but some were years old. And then, as my eyes moved across the board, I saw something that made my knees buckle. There was a photo of me. Not from today. Not from last week. It was me, 5 years ago, the night I left. The angle was from across the street, as I was putting my bag in the car. Someone had been watching us even then. I stumbled back, heart pounding so hard it made me dizzy. Whoever these people were, they weren't just watching Miriam. They'd been watching both of us for years. Before I could think, I heard the faint crunch of footsteps outside the warehouse. The driver of the SUV was back. I ducked behind a stack of crates, trying not to breathe too loud. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I could hear keys jingling, a door creaking. He was inside now. I gripped a rusted metal pipe I'd found on the ground, every muscle in my body screaming to either fight or run. And then his phone rang. "Yeah," he answered, his voice low. "No, I didn't see him. But if he shows up again, we'll take care of it." Take care of it. The words sent a chill through me. I waited until he walked toward the back of the warehouse, then slipped out through the side door. I didn't stop running until I was in my truck and halfway across town. Whatever was happening, it wasn't random. Miriam's letter, the years of silence, the way she'd looked at me when we locked eyes. It was all connected to these people. They'd been controlling her, maybe threatening her, and now they were watching me again. I drove straight to Sycamore Lane, parked 2 houses down, and waited until the SUV was nowhere in sight. My hand was shaking as I walked up to her door. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I needed to know the truth. When she opened the door and saw me, she didn't scream. She didn't slam the door in my face. Instead, she whispered my name like a ghost had walked into her home. Caleb. For a moment, we just stood there, frozen, both of us breathing like we'd been running a marathon. She looked older, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept properly in years. But her eyes, those green eyes I used to wake up next to every morning, were still the same, except now they held something I couldn't name. Guilt, fear, a mixture of both, wrapped in a secret that was slowly eating her alive. Miriam, I whispered, my voice cracking like it hadn't been used in years. We need to talk. She glanced over her shoulder, checking the street behind me as if expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. Then she grabbed my sleeve and pulled me inside so fast I barely had time to close the door. The house smelled like cinnamon and dust, like a home that had been lived in but never really relaxed in. The curtains were drawn, every window locked. She moved quickly, like someone who had memorized every possible escape route. "You shouldn't be here," she said in a sharp, almost trembling voice. "You have no idea what you've done by coming back. Caleb, you don't know who's watching us. You don't know what they're capable of." "I know more than you think," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw him, Miriam. The guy in the SUV. He told me I wasn't supposed to come back. I found something in that warehouse near the railway." I hesitated, my hands shaking. "There are pictures of you, of us, from years ago. What the hell is going on?" Her face turned pale, and she sat down hard on a chair, gripping the table as if the floor might give way beneath her. She didn't speak for a long time, and I could hear my own pulse pounding in the silence. Finally, she whispered, "I wanted to protect you. I thought if you stayed away, they'd leave you alone. I thought they'd stop watching me if I—" She stopped, choking on the words. "Who are they?" I asked, crouching in front of her. "Tell me the truth. No more secrets, Miriam. Not after 5 years. She stared at me, tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't cry. "Do you remember that night? The night I told you to disappear?" Her voice was so low, I had to lean closer to hear. That night, they were here, in this house, 2 men. I woke up, and they were standing over our bed. They told me that if I didn't make you leave, if I didn't cut you out completely, they would kill you. Caleb, they showed me pictures. Pictures of you, of us, of our families. They knew everything, every detail of our lives. They weren't bluffing. The room spun around me. I tried to process what she was saying, but none of it made sense. Kill me? Why? What do they want? "They don't want you," she said, her voice cracking now. "They want something you accidentally stumbled into years ago, something you don't even realize you saw. And if they think you'll remember it, if they think you'll talk—" She broke off, shaking her head. "Caleb, the night before I sent you away, you told me about the guy you saw at the gas station, the one who dropped the envelope. Do you remember that?" I frowned, the memory flickering like an old film reel. A guy in a black coat, late at night, dropping an envelope near my car, muttering something about it not being safe. I'd laughed it off at the time, even told Miriam about it as a weird little story. "Yeah, I remember." "What about it?" "That envelope wasn't meant for you," she said, "and you weren't supposed to see what was inside. They think you know something. Even now. That's why they've never stopped watching me. That's why they—" She glanced at the hallway, where the little girl was peeking out with wide, curious eyes. "That's why they've been using me as leverage." I looked at the child, my mind spinning with questions I wasn't ready to ask. "Miriam, is she—" "Yes," she said quickly, her voice firm, almost desperate. "She's yours. She was born a year after you left, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't risk contacting you. Every time I even thought about reaching out, they'd leave me a reminder, a dead animal on the porch, a phone call where no one speaks, a black car idling outside the house at midnight. Do you understand? They own every piece of my life now." I sank back, my heart thundering in my chest. This wasn't just about a marriage that fell apart. This was something bigger, something I was only starting to see the edges of. And as I stared at Miriam, trembling in that locked-down house, I realized one terrifying truth. Coming back wasn't just a bad idea. It might have been the exact thing they were waiting for. The weight of her confession hit me like a freight train. I sat there, staring at Miriam, trying to process the insanity of what she was saying. 5 years I'd spent blaming myself, thinking I'd failed her, thinking I wasn't good enough. And all this time, she had been living under the thumb of some faceless, nameless threat. I wanted to be angry at her for not telling me, but how could I? She had carried this nightmare alone, while I ran from shadows I didn't even understand. I glanced at the little girl, our daughter, mine. She was peeking out from the hallway again, hiding behind the doorframe, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one missing ear. Her eyes were wide and untrusting, the way a child looks at a stranger they are told not to approach. It killed me to think that she didn't know who I was. I wanted to go to her, to kneel down and just say, "I'm your dad. I'm here now, and I'll never leave again." But the words stuck in my throat. How could I promise that when I didn't even know if I'd live through the week? "Miriam," I said quietly, leaning forward, "we can't just sit here and hope they'll leave you alone. We have to do something. Tell me who they are. Tell me everything you know." She shook her head so fast it was like I'd asked her to step off a cliff. "No, Caleb, you don't get it. These aren't people you can fight. They're not just thugs. They're connected. I don't even know who they really work for. Every time I thought I found a name, a lead, something, it disappeared, like it never existed. They know everything. Where we go, what we say. That night, 5 years ago, when they came here, they didn't even break in. The door was unlocked. They just walked in like they owned the place. I can't let them know you're back." "Well, it's too late for that," I said bitterly. "The guy in the SUV already saw me. He told me to leave Miriam, and I don't think he's going to just let me vanish quietly again." She rubbed her face, her hands trembling. "God, Caleb, why did you come back?" I didn't have an answer. Part of me wanted to say it was because of her, because I'd never stopped thinking about her even after all the years apart. But the truth was darker than that. I came back because I was tired of being a ghost, tired of pretending I didn't care. And now that I knew the truth, or at least a piece of it, there was no way I was walking away again. Before I could say another word, the sound of tires crunching gravel outside made us both freeze. I went to the window and peeked through the gap in the curtains. My blood turned to ice. The SUV was back. Not just one, 2 of them this time. One pulled up across the street, the other stopped directly in front of the house. Miriam's face went white. "It's them," she whispered. "Oh God. Caleb, you need to leave. Right now." "No," I said, my voice lower, harder than I expected. "I'm not running this time. If they want to come here, they can deal with me. Caleb, you don't understand. You can't fight them. They'll kill you. They'll kill all of us if they think you're a threat." The knock on the door was soft, almost polite. A chill ran down my spine. Miriam grabbed my arm. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Go out the back. Take the truck and don't come back. If they see you here..." I didn't move. My heart was pounding, but something inside me had shifted. I was done being afraid. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. A man stood there, the same one who had smiled at me days ago. Black jacket, cap pulled low, the kind of face that looked both forgettable and dangerous. He wasn't smiling now. He just stood there, waiting. When I didn't open the door, he leaned forward, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the wood. "Caleb, we need to talk." Hearing my name from his mouth was like getting punched in the gut. He knew exactly who I was. Miriam pulled at my sleeve, whispering frantically, "Don't open it. Don't. Please, Caleb." But I already knew I was going to. My hand trembled on the doorknob, Miriam whispering frantic, desperate words behind me, begging me not to do it. But I couldn't keep running. Not anymore. I had spent 5 years letting fear rule my life, letting shadows and faceless threats define me. If this was the moment I went down, I was going to face it on my feet, not hiding in some corner like a coward. I opened the door. The man on the porch didn't flinch. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, part calculation, part curiosity, like he was trying to see what I was made of. His eyes flicked past me to Miriam, who was standing pale and rigid just a few steps away, clutching our daughter like a shield. "Caleb," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "We've been waiting for you to come back. Let's not make this harder than it has to be." Something in me snapped. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "You've been terrorizing her, terrorizing my family for 5 years, and I'm done with it. If you want me, here I am, but you're not touching them." For a long, tense moment, he said nothing. He tilted his head slightly, like he was sizing me up, deciding whether I was worth the trouble. Then, to my shock, he smiled. Not the cold, mocking grin I'd seen before, but something almost approving. "You've got guts," he said finally. "I'll give you that." He stepped back slightly, as if he wasn't here to fight at all. "You don't even remember, do you? That envelope you found, all those years ago. It wasn't meant for you. We only wanted to make sure it disappeared, and it did. You've kept your silence for 5 years. That's all we needed. You were never the target, Caleb, but if you'd stayed away, we wouldn't have had to keep watching her." "You expect me to believe that?" I asked, though a part of me knew he was telling the truth. "We're done here," he said, with a finality that felt like the closing of a chapter. "You've proven you're not a threat, and if you want your life back, if you want your family safe, take them and leave this city. Start over. Forget everything. This time, for real." I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching as he walked back to the SUV. The second vehicle turned, and both cars drove off slowly, like they were never in a hurry at all. When they were gone, the silence in the street was almost surreal. I turned back to Miriam, who was staring at me with wide, trembling eyes. She looked like she didn't believe it was over. Maybe I didn't either. But deep down, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. That night, we sat in the kitchen until the early hours of the morning. We talked, really talked, for the first time since before the nightmare began. She told me everything she knew, which wasn't much, and I told her I wasn't leaving again. Not now, not ever. The little girl, our daughter, woke up crying in the middle of the night, and Miriam finally told her the truth. "This is your dad," she said softly, and I knelt down, my heart pounding harder than it had during the confrontation at the door. The little girl studied me with wide, curious eyes before quietly whispering, "Daddy?" It broke me. I hugged her, and for the first time in years, I felt whole again. In the morning, we packed up the essentials. We left that house behind, the curtains still drawn, the echoes of fear still lingering in the walls. I didn't care where we were going, only that we were together. 5 years ago, Miriam told me to disappear. Now, I finally understood why. But this time, I'm not disappearing into fear. I'm disappearing with my family into a new life where we're free. And for the first time since all of this began, I believe we might actually make it.